Okay, oh, this is just our equal opportunity statement that we are serving. We're equal opportunity university and non-discrimination statement. So on to radon. I'm going to admit that person so that leaves. Okay, so the key points that I'll talk about tonight are just in general, what is radon? Why do we care about it here in Gilpin County? We'll talk about how easy it is to test and how fairly easy and inexpensive it is for mitigation. So let's start out with just what is radon. All these things keep coming up on my screen here. Okay, sorry about that. So what is radon? So radon is naturally occurring in our soil, in our bedrock of our soil. So it's because naturally occurring uranium deposits are here and present, mostly in the foothills and the mountains. There tend to be more uranium deposits. So what happens is these uranium deposits are natural. So they're thanks to Mother Nature. They're not because of any mining. They're not because of any landfills. It's just natural deposits that are happening. And so what happens is the uranium is an unstable element. So it's breaking down into radium. And then radium slowly decays into radon. And then radon is the gas that we can't smell, we can't see, but it's potentially present in our buildings. And it's there's been lots of studies that are proving more and more that it's the second leading cause of lung cancer, which is crazy. This thing we can't smell, we can't see, but it's potentially in our buildings that we're living in. It's, you know, long-term exposure to radon can cause lung cancer. So that's really the concern. And if you're not worried about the health issues of radon, you may be concerned if you're trying to sell your house. Just know that buyers these days will probably want to test and will probably want to mitigate if the test calls for mitigation. So what is an acceptable level of radon? So the Surgeon General recommends against long-term exposures not to be above 4 picocuries per liter. So when you do your radon test, if you get a number 4 or higher, that's an action level. But it's interesting to note that no levels of radon are safe. And this action level was created in the 1980s by the EPA, just because mitigating to 4 or below is reliable and at a reasonable cost. So we can't say that we can mitigate to 0. That's impossible because there's about 0.4 picocuries per liter of radon in our outside air. And it builds up even more in our buildings. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that happens in a minute. But so this 4 picocuries per liter is more of like an economic threshold rather than a health threshold. So it would be reasonable for you to say, I want to mitigate my home to as low as possible. I want to be like 1 or 2. That's possible, but it might be more expensive and contractors might not be able to guarantee that they could get the number that low. All right. Dave, I just realized that was you. I don't know. Okay, so Colorado is not the only state affected by radon. You can see on the map, all the red are kind of average numbers of radon, and households are above 4 picocuries per liter. So Colorado is not the only one, but it's interesting to note that even though we tend to have much higher averages in Colorado or in these states, it's so different house by house. So I could test at 100 picocuries per liter, and then my neighbor could test at 1. So it's really important that we test. That's the only way to know, obviously, since we can't see it, we can't smell it. The test is really the only way to know for sure. And this is just another picture. You can see Colorado is all in that zone 1 where the average house is, 50% of the homes are above 4. So here's how it works inside buildings. So as I said, the outside air has some levels of radon, but it's all being diluted and moving around. And it's just in our houses that the concern happens, because our houses kind of create this vacuum, especially in the winter. So that's why in the winter is a good time to test. All of our windows and doors are closed. fans are off. So air is not really circulating in and out of the house as much as it is in the summer. So our houses kind of create this vacuum, and the green arrows coming up from the soil in this picture are indicating radon. So like as your house creates this vacuum, if the temperatures are warmer inside your house than outside your house, there's more of a vacuum. And we all know that warm air rises. And so that cool air is being replaced from the base of our house with radon containing gas, radon gas and air. So the lowest levels of our house tend to have the highest levels of radon. And then it's kind of diluted as you go up in levels of your house. And you can also see that in this graph here. So the vacuum is the yellow line, and then the radon level is the red line. So a vacuum is happening when all your windows and doors are closed, fans are off. And as soon as that line drops, that means that, you know, maybe a couple windows are open. So the vacuum is reduced, and then the radon is immediately reduced. So it's correlating with this like vacuum effect, if that makes sense. So that's how you can kind of understand the concept of where the radon is coming from and why it's best to test in the winter in a closed condition. So radon can be elevated in any kind of home. It doesn't matter if it's new or old or leaky, or an apartment, a school building, office building. Any buildings can have radon. The only ones that wouldn't necessarily have potential would be a tree house or a houseboat. And unfortunately, we don't have many of those here. Okay, so, but luckily you can test for radon. It's a very simple test. And in fact, we got a grant from Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment. So anyone in Gilpin County resident can have up to 2 free radon test kits. And I'll give you the link to that at the end of the presentation. I encourage all of you to order your test today. I ordered mine like 3 weeks ago and it still hasn't come. So I think they might be backed up a little bit. But anyway, I'm going to tell you about how to test. All the instructions are on the test kit, so you don't have to memorize this stuff, but this is just a little heads up of what to expect when you're testing. So you want to test in a closed house condition. So all your windows and doors are closed. You can open your door to go in and out of the house, but all the windows and doors, you want to keep them closed at least 12 hours before you start your test. And then the radon test will be 2 to 7 days long. So it's up to you to decide. And then it kind of just takes an average of the numbers within that 2 to 7 days. So it's just a capture in a one point in time with the highest potential that your house could have, because all the windows and doors are closed and it's in the winter. And then I just put some pictures of fans here. If you have any fans that are bringing air from the outside in or pushing air from the inside out, you want to make sure they're turned off during the test time, because that will kind of skew the numbers. You want to keep the inside air contained to get an idea of like the worst case scenario or the highest amount of radon that you would be exposed to. So deciding a test location. So this will just be like a little test kit that you'll either hang or place on a counter. So you don't want to put it in a leaky place. You don't want to put it in front of direct sunlight, and you don't want to put it where it's really moist in like a bathroom or a kitchen. So in this diagram, it's showing that you want to choose the lowest lived-in space of your house. So if you work in your basement, you'd want to do the test there. If you're never in your basement, don't do the test there. Do it on the first level, the lowest level that you hang out in on a regular basis. And a bedroom or a living room are probably the best rooms to do it in as well. And then again, these instructions are on the test kit, but you want to put it, 3 feet from a door, place it about table height, 20 inches or so from the ground, 12 inches from any exterior walls, and just put it in a place where it won't be disturbed for the time of the test, 2 to 7 days. And also think about when you start your test and stop your test, you want to make sure when you stop your test, you can pretty much immediately finish the test, seal it up, and take it to the post office, because I think there's like a week that the lab needs to receive it by in order to get accurate results from it. So if you finish your test and then let it sit around for a little bit, it might not be a reliable answer, reliable test results. And then, so once you get your test results back, they'll email you the test results, and check your junk mail. That's where mine ended up. So for picocuries per liter is that action level. So that's what you want to look for. If you get a test that's around 4, or maybe like 3, or maybe 5, 3, 4, 5, something like that, and you're just not convinced that you should mitigate or you don't want to mitigate. We also have long-term test kits. These are also available. We got some available through this grant. We want you to do the short-term tests first, because if you get like a 1 or 2, you don't need to do a long-term test, which are more expensive. They take more time too. They're at least 91 days. So you're looking at 3 or 4 months. And for these tests, they're just in your regular lived-in conditions. So you don't have to have a closed windows, closed doors, fans off. You just want to have a regular environment that you're living in. And so this gets more of a long-term average of what you're actually being exposed to, so that you could make a more educated decision on whether you want to mitigate or not. It's up to you. I made a decision to mitigate my house based on a short-term test. But I could understand why someone would want to do a long-term just to be more sure of what they're being exposed to. So if it's determined that you need to mitigate or you want to mitigate your house, mitigation, there's, depending on the structure that you have, if you have a crawl space or a concrete slab or a drainage system with a sump pump. So the mitigation is going to look different depending on these 3 situations, or I'm sure there's more options for different types of structures. But so the mitigation, the cost of it will be kind of based on what type of structure you have, rather than the amount of radon that they're trying to mitigate. There's more information on specifics around how to mitigate in an EPA document that I'll give a link to at the end. I just don't have time today to talk about the specifics of mitigation. Although I guess I could tell you really quickly, based on my experience. I have a crawl space. So that first example, so it was a pretty simple system. They just put down really heavy plastic on under the, above the soil of the crawl space, and then taped it or glued it to the side of the structure. And then underneath that, they basically suck all the air out to the outside of the house with a fan and emit it above the house. And so that's pretty simple. And you can kind of see a picture of it here. There's a fan, and then the piping, or sometimes they'll use gutters to just shoot the air out above. It has to be 12 feet or 12 inches above the house. And the fan is a little 90-watt fan, so it's negligible of the amount of energy it takes. The fan is always on. So if you don't hear the fan on, then your system probably isn't working. I think I kind of went over this. Cost is a function of the foundation type, and then also aesthetics. So if you don't want this fan like in the front of your house, but all your electrical lines are in the front of your house, then they'll have to run some electrical lines to the back of your house. So that might cost a little bit more. But so that's the aesthetic side of it. But for the most part, I guess I'll just say prices are probably higher now, but 3 years ago when I got mine mitigated, it was around, I think, around $2,000. So it's not super expensive, but it's still a chunk of change. And I will mention too that there's a low income radon mitigation program through the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment. So you can check into that if you're worried about the finances of it. I would just test and don't worry about having to mitigate until you have to, and there's options out there to potentially pay for your mitigation if you're lower income. So this is just another picture of the system. You can see the fan at the bottom, and then the pipe bringing the air all the way up to the top and emitting it above the eave of the house. Pretty simple. Some additional considerations, you want to use a certified contractor who also has local contractor's license. We have a list in the back of the room, and for folks online, we're going to drop in the chat a link to the list of contractors who work in Gilpin County. There's only 5 of them. So, I mean, but we've already done the homework for you there. And they generally, contractors will guarantee that they can bring your levels at below 4. So if you want to get like 1, they might not be able to guarantee that, but they'll usually guarantee below 4 they can get your house to. And we recommend conducting a post mitigation test as well. Often the contractors will provide one for you to do, and that's okay. And then just generally testing every 2 or 3 years to make sure your mitigation is working, is a good general practice. So here's a link to epa.gov/radon if you want to get more documents on general radon. They also have some booklets on mitigation, so you can understand a little bit more about how that mitigation process, what it looks like for different types of foundations. And then this last slide is a QR code. You can take a picture of that and it'll link you to order your test kit. We also have, I guess we'll drop it into the chat too, the link to it. If you guys don't have phones, or internet access, we'll help you. So please contact our office, CSU Extension in Gilpin County. If you are having trouble ordering these on your own, we can order them for you, and make sure they get to your house if you don't have internet or whatever, or a computer. So that, I think, is the end. Yeah, that's the end of my presentation. So does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Hi. One of the slides showed the radon level highest on the lowest floor, and then, I mean, that would seem to be what it was showing.
Yes.
So it actually works that way, or you?
Yes, it does. So yeah, the question, if you didn't hear it online, is the radon levels are going to be lowest in the lowest part of your house because the radon is coming from the soil. So the idea is that it's coming from basically the bottom of your house. It's kind of leaking in. And then as it rises up through the different floors of your house, it's going to be diluted with the rest of the air. And so that's why we recommend testing at the lowest livable level, because that will be the highest number. And we can safely assume that, you know, on the 2nd or 3rd floor, it will not be that high. It will be diluted by the time it gets to those higher floors. Good question. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, it was my understanding that, you know, since there's radon in the soil, but there's also going to be radon in the well water. Since you're talking about wells today, it might be good if someone knows how to address that.
Yeah.
My understanding was that if you take a shower, if you're boiling water, if you're doing all kinds of things, you might be releasing radon just from that. And of course, those are short-term activities that aren't going to be testable by some test that goes for 2 days or 3 months or whatever. So do you know anything about that? Or
Yeah. So the question is about radon in water, in well water. You can test your water for radon. It's a fairly expensive test. I think it's like, I looked into it, was like $200 or $300 or more maybe. Honestly, I would not be concerned in this area. While we do have high radon in the air, our water numbers aren't high enough to be a concern. It's not, the concern is not drinking the water. The concern is if you have radon in your water, every time you turn on your faucet, whatever it's off gassing, that's the concern. So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me and I don't remember them, but like, it's only a small percentage. Like if your water is testing really high in radon, but by the time you calculate it out to what you're actually exposed to by turning on your faucets, it's very minimal. I didn't explain that very well. I wish I had the numbers in front of me to explain more, but it's not common for it to be an issue here in Gilpin, and that's why I hadn't talked about it. I didn't talk about it in the slides. But if you are concerned, you can go ahead and test your water, and I can help you figure out based on your water radon numbers how much you're actually being exposed to and if it's an issue.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, we are on schedule, maybe even a little bit ahead. Cool. Well, I'm going to switch slides and we'll move on to Elisa to talk about wells.
Right. While Jen's getting that set up, I'm Elisa Witt, and I'm the Public Health Coordinator for Gilpin County. I've been in the position about a year. And in public health, we always look at risks that we can do something about. There are some risks that we can't do anything about. And so that's why Radon is one of our, both for Jennifer's department and for public health. We're very interested in helping residents lower their risks for things like cancer and other health hazards. And tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about wells. And I'm going to have to forward because Kelvin's presentation is up here first. So where's those?
Sorry.
That's okay. That's my fault because we put them in the
You
wrong
can
order.
use
These
the
arrow.
arrows.
Okay, so I'm just you're gonna see like a flash of Kelvin's slides. He's gonna be talking next, but I'm gonna talk first about wells. And let's see. One more slide. Go. Nope. Let's try this again. Here we go. All right. So most of us in Gilpin County, unless you live in the city of Central or in Black Hawk proper, are on wells. And I know that when I moved to Gilpin County about 10 years ago, I had never had a well, and I really had no idea what to do to keep my well safe and what my responsibilities were as a homeowner. So it's important to know, oh, now we're not on the right slide again. Here we go. It's important to know what your responsibility is as a person who owns a well. So in all over the country, if you're on a public water system, it's the county's responsibility, or sometimes the state, to keep your water safe and to test it and to make sure it's good water. But if you're on a well, it is your responsibility as the owner of that well to make sure that your water is safe. The state does regulate well installers and license them, but they do not get involved in private well safety or testing. It's up to the homeowner to do that. And so that's why I thought it was important that we talk about wells and to learn, what you need to do as a homeowner. So having safe drinking water is really, really important, right? We can only go a few days without water, and we need good fresh water free of contaminants. It's especially important for small people, for children and babies, because they have a much lower tolerance if there's contaminants in the water before they end up in the hospital or very sick. So unlike, as I said, unlike public water systems, you as a well owner, if the buck stops with you to make sure that your water is safe. And so to do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about groundwater. And all wells rely on groundwater. And most of the groundwater in the United States is good drinking water and safe. But there are some areas where contaminants can get into the water table and the groundwater. And in general, the deeper your well is, the better your water quality is going to be. That's the way the geology works. So what water does from rain or snow, right, comes down through the earth, and the earth is like a filtering system. And depending on what it goes through, that's what could possibly end up in your groundwater. And we'll talk more in a little bit about other ways your well could get contaminated and how it can get contaminated. So underground rocks act like a filtering system, and they end up into what's called either an aquifer or groundwater. And it does naturally contain some elements, some minerals. Most of them are not harmful. It depends on the level of those elements. So some of the elements that you could find in just naturally occurring groundwater, like arsenic, boron, selenium, lead, lots of other minerals. And here in Gilpin County, there's some specific minerals that are more common in our groundwater, but usually they're at low enough levels where it's not going to be a harm to your health. You may see from calcium some white deposits. That doesn't mean your water isn't safe to drink. But they also can become contaminated, well water and groundwater, from bacteria. And that could be from passing through feces on the surface of the ground from our nice giant moose or other animals. Could be from having a septic system that's malfunctioning. And Kelvin Decker, who works in our department in public health, is our environmental health specialist, and he's going to talk a little bit more after this about septic and how to keep those safe. But the other thing to think about with well water is if there's a flooding condition, and it could be a general flood like in the area, or it could be a flood maybe just in your neighborhood or your property, depending on slope and conditions. Heavy snowfall can sometimes inundate wells and cause a flooding problem. And that's when there's more likelihood that your well could become contaminated with certain kinds of bacteria. So the two main types of bacteria that we want to think about when we're testing our wells are total coliform and E. coli. Total coliform is not necessarily harmful to human health, but it is an indicator that there could be other contaminants in your well. It should not be in the groundwater. So if there's coliform in your well, it's coming in from somewhere else. All right. And like I said, it's not going to hurt you to have coliform in your water, but it's an indicator that you need to test your well to make sure there's not other contaminants that have snuck into that system. So E. coli is another story. E. coli is dangerous to humans and especially to small children and babies. So that's a red flag. If your well tests positive for E. coli, you need to take action on that immediately. I'll talk about that. And this slide's got a lot of words on it. Sorry, it's a little hard to read, but the possible explanations for total coliform would be wells that are located in a gravelly or sandy soil where water moves too quickly into the groundwater. And that's where you're going to get maybe some of the surface level bacteria from natural animal waste or other contaminants on the surface that's filtering too quickly into that groundwater and ending up as bacteria in your well. Wells located in areas that are common to flooding, again, maybe by slope or other situations where the groundwater just gets too saturated. And again, it's maybe filtering too quickly into the water table. Leaking pipes could allow bacteria into your well. So you could have a leaky pipe in your well system. If you have a treatment system on your well, some people install, separate treatment systems to have better taste or to filter out some minerals. That could be malfunctioning and that could allow bacteria to get into your system. And then one of the most common in our area for having E. coli into the well is either your septic system or your neighbor's septic system might have failed and contaminated your well. And that's a problem that you need a professional to help you with. E. coli, if it's in your well, and in the year that I've been testing water samples here in Gilpin, we've only had 3 out of maybe 150 that tested positive for E. coli. But in our department, when we see that, that's an immediate phone call to the homeowner. We don't just email you or wait till you read your email. We want you to know right away that your water is not drinkable until you get that fixed. So your water should be treated. You can boil the water and still drink it if it tests positive. But personally, I wouldn't trust that. I just wouldn't feel comfortable. I would go out and buy bottled water until I had my well fixed. And sometimes, with total coliform, you can sometimes shock your well with chlorine, and there's a procedure how to do that. And we have that information available at Public Health. We can email it to you. But if it's total coliform, that's really, you don't want to try to fix that yourself. That's when you want to call a well professional to help you figure out what exactly is going on and how to fix that. So you do need to test your water. It's recommended by the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment and Gilpin County Public Health to test your water for E. coli and total coliform, which are the 2 tests we can do in our certified water lab right here in Gilpin. It's a simple test. We have an incubator. We put some substance in the sample bottle. We put it in an incubator for 24 hours, and then we read it, and we can tell just presence or absence. We can't tell the levels of total coliform or E. coli. If you want to have more extensive testing, then we highly recommend that you get that done through the state water lab. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to get that done in a moment. Now, preventing problems with your well. This is important. You do want to make sure that your well cap hopefully is very secure. Locking well caps are the best, just to make sure nothing gets tampered with. You don't want to mix pesticides, fertilizers, herbicides, fuels, degreasers, anything near your wellhead, because it's likely to leak into the water table right directly where your well pump is. Never dispose, if you have abandoned wells, if you have a large property that had an old well and you had a new well installed, never use that abandoned well as a dumping site, because it will get into the groundwater on your property. And then make sure that you have your well serviced at least every 3 or 4 years. It really depends on how active your well is and how old your well is, how often you need to have it serviced. But I recommend that you use a professional. We have licensed well professionals. They're licensed actually by the state to install wells or service wells. You have to be licensed and certified by the state of Colorado. Take care in working around your well and your wellhead, and make sure that you're not damaging any of the components that are right underground. So in Gilpin County, we have much stricter regulations regarding the distance between your septic system and your well. So in this photo or this diagram, it shows a 50-foot minimum setback. But in Gilpin County, we have a 200-foot setback. And the reason is the way our soils are, they're very rocky, they're very porous, and water flows more quickly from this, possibly if the septic system is malfunctioning and leaking, it'll flow more quickly than in some other geological areas than it does in Gilpin County. So years ago, Gilpin adopted, and parts of Jefferson County and Boulder County that are mountainous also have that 200-foot setback. So that's important to know. And let's see, flooding. Flooding is another concern, whether, like I said, it's just your property or your neighbors, in your area, or whether it's countywide. That's a situation that can inundate a well and cause contaminated water to leak into the system. And so if you had flooding, you do not want to drink your water until you've had it tested. And you might need to have you will need to have your well checked out and serviced by a professional. So you do not want to use the water at all to avoid becoming, to have contaminated water, in your body or even washing with it. And you want to contact a well professional to check out your system and see if any parts need to be replaced, flush it out completely so it doesn't have any contaminated water coming through the system, because just even a little bit of bacteria, once it gets into your system, bacteria grows, especially in a closed system like a well. So that's something that really needs servicing. And I kind of went quickly. I guess I'm a fast talker, but I'd love to answer questions. Yes.
What does servicing your well involve?
Well, it just involves checking all the components of the well to make sure they're functioning properly. So, wells have pressure tanks that charge the water so that it gets into your house. So there's a lot of components, electrical and mechanical, that over time can fail. And then they're also looking to make sure that your well casing isn't cracked, because that's where bacteria and contaminants can get into your system. So there's ways that they can test it. They test the pH and then other things. And then of course they'll always do samples to make sure that there's no contaminants. One thing I did want to talk about, and I'll take your question next, I almost forgot, is the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment in their water lab. They can test for all mineral contaminants. They can also test for the exact levels of total coliform or E. coli and other properties of your water. So if you just buy a house in Gilpin County, I recommend that you do a more extensive test with the state lab, to find out what the mineral content of your well is. And if you have any other concerns in your water, the experts at that state lab will be able to give you expert advice on whether they recommend a filter or other situations to make your water better. If you go on their website and you just type in well water testing and you put in State Health Department, Colorado State Health Department, it'll bring you right to the page, and they have packages. So the one that I recommend is called the General Colorado package, because it tests for the minerals and the contaminants that are most likely in our area. It's about $107. It takes about a month to get the results back. They will send you testing bottles, multiple testing bottles, free of charge. They'll mail them to your home. They'll give you instructions for how to do each bottle, because they each test for different elements. And then within 24 hours of collecting those samples, you do need to drive it down to their lab and pay them. And then they will email you the results. And the nice thing about doing that is, like I said, if there are high levels of certain minerals or problems with your water, they will give you expert advice on how to remedy that. So I recommend doing that test when you have a new well installed, when you buy a home up here, or definitely if there's a flooding condition, because situations could have changed with what's the groundwater is within that's feeding your well. Okay, yes.
I'm gonna feedback on her question. So when you service a well, it's all above the ground and they open it up.
No, they open it up and they look at the components, they test to make sure everything's functioning properly, and they have testing. I'm not sure exactly how they do it, but they can tell if the well casing, it's a sealed system, so they
They take it off.
yeah. Yeah.
We have a few questions from online.
Okay.
Just want to make sure we have time. We have, oh yeah.
Yeah, we're doing great.
Okay, I just want to come up here so they can hear online.
Yeah.
Okay, does the 200-foot setback rule apply to septic systems located on a neighbor's property as it relates to the location of your well?
Yes, yes. So when anybody installs a well or a septic system, then public health will look at where the neighbor's well or the neighbor's septic system is located. And they'll make sure that your neighbor's not installing a septic system that's less than 200 feet from your well. Okay, so that's a good question.
Okay, the next question is, lots of properties are having the main well line freeze during the winter. Are there things that can be done to mitigate this risk?
That's a great question that I don't know the answer to, because I am not a well professional. But it's a great question. We have several good well companies here in this area that might be able to give you that advice. And then if that person wants to put their email address in the chat, I can also get an answer from the state health department on that topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this last one, I'm not sure you'll be able to answer either. I have no idea. Can you talk about how the Gross Dam project may impact our wells?
No, I cannot. I don't know enough about the Gross Dam project, but I do know that the people that are working on that look at things like groundwater and the water table, and hopefully they're taking good care to not impact that, but I cannot say for sure. I just know that there's a lot of good people who know a lot about geology and water tables that are working on that project and should be taking that into consideration.
Okay, that's all the questions.
Great. All right. Any other questions? Yes, Jeannie.
Years ago, we tested some of the wells for fluoride levels because we were concerned that our kids weren't getting enough fluoride to keep their teeth healthy. And we found that a number of wells in Gilpin County didn't have sufficient fluoride levels. Would you talk about that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So yeah, most public water systems in the United States add fluoride to drinking water because it's very good to prevent tooth decay. And I know I grew up with fluoridated water and have pretty low amount of cavities in my mouth. But I have not seen, and that's a great question. I have not specifically seen what does that testing that you were experienced, was that done by the state lab?
Yeah.
Yes. It's, you know, what's interesting is it's not in that package that I spoke of. It would be a separate test that you would have to test. And I don't know enough about how an individual could fluoridate their water. I don't know if it's possible because again, we're talking about groundwater. So you couldn't really, you might have to have just fluoride tablets or fluoride treatment at the dentist, but to be able to have it in a well system, I'm not sure, but it doesn't sound like it would be tenable because remember, that's shared system, and to keep the fluoride levels correct, I'm not sure how that would work. I think you'd have to fluoridate your water in your home separately. What did you know a lot about public health too, but
At that time, the pediatricians were actually prescribing.
Yep.
Fluoride drops.
Yes.
For children, because you couldn't just add it to.
Yeah.
The well system, and the idea was to test for it, get that information to the pediatricians. And the reason it was a big deal is because many of the pediatricians that our families went to were in the city.
yes,
And they would have never thought,
you know,
pediatricians
yeah,
would have never thought about whether these kids were getting
fluoride.
enough fluoride. And so we were able to get the families to test and then take that information to their pediatricians.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up because I had not thought of that again, because I've been here 10 years and I just had fluoridated water. So that would be a great thing for us, especially to talk to our local clinic about. Dr. Hoyle there at the clinic at Clinica. Thank you for bringing that up. I will follow up on that. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
Every spring, with the snow melt and so forth, we end up with brownish water.
Mhm.
And I understand that's common.
Mhm.
And it's either, silt or tannins or something
Mhm.
that, we haven't been worried about. We got some treatment stuff that we haven't hooked up yet, but anyway, do you know what that is? And is it an issue or?
Well, do you test your water for the 2 types of bacteria that we test for? Because that's whenever you have cloudy water or water that's anything but clear, you want to also make sure that there's not other contaminants like the bacteria I spoke of. There's plenty of solvents in water that are not harmful to human health. But if I were you, I would, when the water is brown like that and cloudy, that's when I would actually take it to the state lab during one of those times to find out if that contamination is anything more than just silt or other bacteria had gotten in there as well. Because that obviously means your wells got inundated and it's not a closed system anymore. So it's possible that when you have that silt, then there might be a flushing that needs to happen, to get your well system to be closed again and without that silt in it. But that's a good question also for a well professional.
Okay.
Yeah.
We tested several times
Mhm.
without problems, but not necessarily when it was.
When it was brown, yeah, that's what I would do, is I would that would be the time that I would order those sample bottles from the state lab. They ship them for free. You could just order them and have them at your house. And then when your water looks cloudy, then that's when I would do the more extensive test with the state. Yeah. The general Colorado package, there's many packages. You could test for a lot of different things, but that $107 package is really the best. It's also what they recommended after the Marshall fire. That's the package the state recommended all those residents do after that flooding, that general Colorado package. Yeah. Yeah.
On his matter, we just had our water tested
Mm-hmm.
about 2.5 months.
Mhm.
With the geo water.
Mhm.
Out there,
Mm-hmm.
and we asked the same question, why does it turn these different colors?
Mm-hmm.
And their theory is not so much snow melt. Is because we have so many pine needles,
Oh.
it saturates through and works its way down. When this melting does occur or we get a lot of rain,
Mm-hmm.
that's when this happens.
Mm-hmm.
He said it will flush itself out in 2 or 3 days, which it does,
Mm-hmm.
but it is.
So you had it tested by them when your water was cloudy? Good.
It
Yeah.
was a little more expensive than the States, but
Uh-huh.
they were right there tested in the house.
Yeah. They're a good company, and being up in Evergreen, they do know about mountain water. Yeah. So yeah, I know a lot of people that have used that geo water. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned that there are some minerals that are typically more common here in Gilpin.
Mhm.
Do you know specifically which ones?
Yeah, well, arsenic, lead, cadmium, uranium, and the radon that Jennifer spoke about, but she's absolutely right that radon's not, it's more expensive and it's not necessary to test for radon, but the heavy metals, lead, copper, arsenic, cadmium,
Gotcha.
those are what's in that general Colorado package. Yeah. Yes, correct.
I'd like to point one thing out about your surface casing is crowded,
Mm-hmm,
that there's certainly standards or it'd be a good idea if it is. In fact, I think it's the state standard that
Mhm.
it has to be pressure grouted with concrete around or maybe some other material to avoid having surface contamination from the area around your surface casing.
mm-hmm,
And I spent a lot of time in Winter Park installing pitless adapters on the well casings
mm-hmm,
when I was putting in water lines.
mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that on a lot of wells, when I dug down there and was on the casing, that they weren't pressure treated, pressure grouted.
Mm.
And it's disappointing, but it's just the facts. And it's hard to go check for that with a shovel and a pick, you know?
Yeah, once it's in there. Yeah. So that's a good question. If you do have your well serviced, to ask them if they can tell if it was, thank you for bringing that up. You know a lot more about it than I do, because you were in that business, but we have a lot of older properties in this county that maybe the wells were put in before the newer regulations came out. We have that same issue with septic systems. So it's good to ask those questions of the professionals. The best well is a very well sealed well, right? And that's what you want to go for. And especially if your property is older, you may not have that and you may need that, and that may be, is it hard to do that like retroactively to put that seal on, do you think?
Practically impossible.
Yeah.
But there's one thing you can do, and that's that you go out and look at your wellhead
Mm-hmm.
and try to create a situation with soils that you put around it to direct water away from it. But that fits with the flood idea also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, those are good questions to ask a well professional, like what can I do to protect my wellhead and keep it from getting flooded? If there are things that you can do with slope or with, different kinds of sand or soil, right? To have the water flow away. Yeah.
Not sand.
Not sand, soil, different kinds of soil.
Right.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
it's easy for me to talk about it because I worked around it for so long.
Right.
But I'm gonna go home and look at my wellhead, see if I should change it.
Okay.
I
Right.
appreciate the program.
Thank you. And I appreciate you all being here. Any other questions? All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Kelvin Decker. And he is our environmental health specialist. And big part of his job is septic systems here in Gilpin County. You're going to have to go back to the beginning. I should for you. Yep.
My name's Kelvin. I'm the environmental health specialist for Gilpin County. Just a quick note too. We just talked about setbacks for septic systems. You can have a higher level treatment system that is over 100 feet and less than 200 feet. So that's also something to consider. If you are wondering why, there's a septic system pretty close to your well. But typically, if it's not a higher level treatment system, it's going to be 200 feet.
Thank you for that correction.
So on-site wastewater treatment system, also known as a septic system, basically just treats your wastewater before it goes into the environment. I do have a video and I understand that it might not be loud enough, but let's see how it plays. This just gives a basic overview of what a septic system is.
Hey there, welcome to Septics 101. In this video, we're going to cover the basics of sewage and on-site septic systems. In the past, sewage was not treated, and the outhouses or cesspools that were used did not effectively remove pathogens, which are harmful disease-causing organisms. Bacteria, viruses, protozoa, and worms can all be present in domestic wastewater and septic systems and can cause diseases such as hepatitis, cholera, diarrhea, and other gastrointestinal illnesses. In modern times, rules and regulations have been established on how to properly dispose of sewage. When not connected to a wastewater treatment facility or sewer, a home's best long-term option is a septic system. Clearly, it's important to make sure your septic system works properly, but first, you need to know how your system works. In this video, we'll look at sewage and its potential impacts on health and the environment, and we'll explore the different types of septic systems and how they work. We'll also talk about being a responsible septic system owner and how to care properly for a system, as well as how to detect a system failure and get help. This is all to maintain the health of your household for you and for your family, and protect the water quality as well as save you money. If you're completing this course for a certification program, there will be an exam at the end of the presentation.
No.
Purchasing a home with a septic system, or simply wondering about your existing system, this video is for you. So what is sewage anyway? Sewage is all the wastewater that comes from your house, your toilet, your dishwasher and washing machine, sink and shower drain, and all the solids and waste that comes with it. Up to 50% of domestic sewage is created by your clothes washer and toilet. Your dishwasher produces 3%, while your bath, shower, and sink faucets produce the remaining percentage. All this wastewater exits your house and enters your septic system. By the way, rainwater, surface water, and groundwater are not considered sewage.
All right. So just a basic overview of a septic system. All right. To put it plainly, these are the key components of a septic system. It's going to be the pipe from the house going into the septic tank, and then piping from the septic tank goes to the soil treatment area. So a little bit more about the importance of maintaining a septic system. Really, it's just, you know, if you're regularly maintaining your septic system, it'll be cheaper in the long run. If you don't, you risk just paying for repairs or just a whole new system. So I would definitely recommend just having someone surface your septic system at least 3 to 5 years. So higher level treatment systems can cost more. So that's something to be aware of if you're regularly maintaining your septic system. It also protects your property value. So obviously, if you have a malfunctioning septic system, it's probably not going to look great. It's not going to smell great, and you know we'll probably become aware of it as well. It keeps you and your neighbors healthy, and then also keeps the environment safe. And then here's just a video about just the general maintenance of a septic system and kind of what the kinds of things you need to avoid using and putting into your septic system.
Septic systems need regular maintenance, just like your car or your home. First of all, know where all the components of your system are located on your property. An as-built or record drawing is a technical diagram of your septic system. Check with your local health department to obtain a copy of your as-built. The record drawing can tell you what type of system you have, where the components are located on your property, and provide other useful information. Record drawings are not always accurate, so make sure you verify it's correct. If you need to have your system located, make sure you also know the location of all utilities. Depending on the type of system, you'll want to know the location of your septic tank, pump tank, sand filter, distribution box, and drain field. Let's talk about what you can do to protect and care for your system on a daily basis. Garbage disposals grind up unprocessed food into fine particles, which can clog components of your system, like pumps or even drain field pipes and soil. Use it sparingly. An alternative is to compost. Make sure you have an outlet baffle screen installed to help protect the drain field. Doing your laundry has a big impact on your septic system as well. Space out your laundry loads to allow your septic tank to settle properly. If water flows too rapidly through the septic tank, solid material will not separate and could move on to more sensitive parts of the system. Limit the use of bleach. Bleach kills the helpful microbes which treat the wastewater. Liquid fabric softener can seriously alter the chemistry within the septic tank, hindering proper treatment. Installing high-efficiency washers and toilets can increase your septic system's life and save you money. Do not throw garbage into your toilets or feminine products and wipes of any kind, even those that are flushable. Kitty litter and pet waste of any kind should never go into your septic system. Some cleaning products claim to be safe for septic systems. This may or may not be accurate. Look for cleaning products which use everyday ingredients such as vinegar and baking soda. If you do use strong cleaning products, just use less. Never put paint, thinners, or strong chemicals of any kind down your drains. Many areas have disposal services for dangerous or toxic material. To dispose of unused medicine, bag it up and throw it in the garbage. Check with your local health department or pharmacy to find out whether a drug take-back program is available in your area. Do not drain hot tubs and water softeners into your septic system. There's no need to waste your money on septic additives. Just use your septic system properly. Let's talk about how to protect your drain field. It's critical to protect your drain field and reserve area. The reserve area is a part of the property set aside in the event that the current drain field fails. Protect your drain field from motor vehicle traffic, parked vehicles, heavy loads, and livestock. Don't dig, use heavy fertilizer or weed killer on your drain field. Also, be sure not to build anything over your drain field. Protect your drain field by diverting surface or roof water runoff away from it. Look for shallow root plants. Contact your local nursery or health department for more information about what's safe to plant over septic systems. This tree was planted in a below-grade sand filter. The tree roots completely filled all the pipes in the sand filter and it had to be replaced. Your septic system requires routine maintenance. This includes inspection of all system components, pumping tanks, and cleaning filters when needed, and making sure repairs are performed. Risers increase accessibility to the system for you or a professional. They can also keep costs lower if a professional needs to service the system. If you do not have risers, you should have them installed. I did cholera, diarrhea, and
Oops. So if you've never pumped your septic tank, you either don't use too much water and your system is fine, or there's a tank leak. The other reason maybe your tank is full of solids and it eventually will clog up your septic system back into the house, and it'll result in your STA failing, soil treatment area. So typically septic tanks last around 50 years. It kind of depends on the makeup of the septic tank itself. So there's a poly tank that is sometimes installed, or concrete. Most popular ones now are poly. I see a lot of those in the county. And then soil treatment areas typically last around 25 to 30 years. You know, once you start seeing ponding happening in your soil treatment area, that's usually a good indicator that there's something going on with your soil treatment area. And then if you have a failing system from a routine maintenance check, just please let us know within 2 business days. Repairs do have to follow state regulations, regulation 43. It's what I use to make sure that we're within compliance with the state. I know Gilpin County does have stricter regulations in certain areas, but a lot of it comes from regulation 43, and we can't really deviate from that too much. And for those of you planning to sell your homes, just please ensure that you are applying for your use permit. This will trigger an inspection of your septic system. which allows us to know how your septic system is operating, especially for buyers too. We definitely want to make sure that buyers are informed of what they're purchasing and not acquiring a septic system that is failing or not working correctly. Does anyone have any questions? Hi.
Could you go back to that
Sure.
previous slide, because there's that thing about the 5 years. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So there is a list of exceptions. I wasn't able to fit them all here. If you guys just want to email me, I can send you that document of the use permit, and there's a bunch. There's like 20 of them. So I will put my email up for you guys to know me if you have any questions.
I just want to get your contact. Oh,
I
sorry.
think you had a question back there.
Yeah. go ahead.
Hey.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay, my question is, the tank itself,
Mhm.
how they mound it up.
Mhm.
You don't want anything growing up on that. You want that to have as much sunlight as possible, correct?
No.
No,
What? Your
That's
septic
okay.
tank?
the tank itself. We had it serviced 4 years ago, had it pumped out.
Okay.
And they said that we needed to move trees and stuff because you want sunlight to heat that tank up to help break down the contaminants in it.
Gotcha. I haven't heard that. I will look into that and let you know, but as far as I know, as long as you're not having like shrubs or debris or anything that's gonna get anywhere close to that septic tank, it's best to avoid that. So any bushes, I don't know, plants, definitely trees. You definitely don't want the roots to penetrate the septic tank and bust it open.
Oh, I wanted to follow up privately because it's kind of I don't think it'll pertain to anybody else here,
Okay,
and it has to do with our permit and
okay.
that sort of thing.
Are you getting one repaired or replaced or?
No, we bought the house 3 years ago and I think our system is one of the ones that you can have within 200 feet. Is what did you call it? It's
200, oh, like a
Higher
higher level treatment.
higher level, yeah. And so there's just a difference between the number of bedrooms that we can have and
Gotcha.
the capacity that's stated and stuff
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can talk about it more.
Well, one question, one comment, we have the same thing where the discrepancy between the number of bedrooms, that was in the real estate thing versus. That was Sean does have to about it. But the other question I have is, what are risers that to install those?
I'm sorry.
What are risers that to install those if you don't have them? I didn't know about that.
So risers are kind of like they're it's mandated to have them at a certain distance so that you can reach into the septic tank and pull out the filters. They're like access points. Yeah.
The other thing I think we should mention is when you talk about a higher level treatment system, there are mechanical components in that system, and that requires annual servicing by a professional. Like, if you buy a home or have a higher level treatment system installed, you have a legal responsibility to have that system checked by a professional annually. That's a requirement by the state law.
Right, yeah, so there is that requirement for higher level treatment systems. One of the other things that I would say too is, just making sure that your control panels are checked whenever you have septic pumpers out. They should be able to let you know if there are any issues. They'll scope your septic tank, be able to let you know if there's a leak in any of the pipes, or if there's any clogging or anything like that. They should be able to help you. Septic pumpers usually have inspectors as well, so they should be able to evaluate that and give you a good inspection report. Yes, sir.
So when you have an advanced treatment system.
Mhm.
And it's supposed to be serviced, whatever.
Annually, yeah.
Does the county receive?
Yeah.
Documentation or whatever? Do you know that happened?
So right now we have someone in community development that just started. She will be helping me keep track of the maintenance that goes on with higher level treatment systems. So we basically do need to know that. And for the others, I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to do that long term. But for the higher level treatment systems, yeah, you just send them over to community development. And I can give you that person's contact information, and she'll organize all that information for me and let me know.
So if you were gonna buy a home
Mhm.
that had a high level treatment
Sure.
system, or even a standard one, and you weren't necessarily having much knowledge about the thing, is this of the public record where they come to the county and see the old permits?
Yeah, so you can actually go to your septic pumper. So if you've only had one septic pumper at your house for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, they should have records of your previous inspections and just whenever they came out to pump out the septic tank.
Okay, so that's for the pumping.
Mhm. Same with the inspections too. If you've had any inspections done by the septic pumpers, or another inspection company, they should have records that you can access, and they should be able to provide that to you.
Right, but to answer your question a little bit more thoroughly, Craig. Right now, we have a lot of very old septic records that are on paper. And the county is working on a project, they have multiple people working on getting all those old records scanned in. They're not all in yet. And then we are developing a system, and it's through that platform called OpenGov. And you will eventually, once all those records are scanned in, be able to find those online through that website and that platform. That's the same platform that eventually will have an automated system for all the higher level treatment systems in the county, so that reminders will go out if more than a year has gone by and we don't have a record of that inspection happening. So all the inspectors and the pumpers will also be using that system to upload into that OpenGov. And then it'll eventually, we're not quite there yet, we're working on that. We'll have an automated system. So, and then eventually there will be fines attached. So if somebody goes 2 or 3 years and we don't have a record that they had their system inspected, this is just for the higher level treatment systems.
I really appreciate,
Yeah,
after the years I spent installing
Yeah.
and being involved.
Yeah.
That, boy, it just moves on so much faster than you think, that personnel leave.
Yeah.
Different things change.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in order to protect yourself, your busy life and all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
Kind of disappears.
Yeah, we are moving with the help of our new county manager, Ray Rears, to get everything automated and online, so it's not all paper records. And with that, then it won't be on us to always figure out, it'll be automated, like who has not kept their system. It's really a requirement by law. So higher level treatment systems are allowed to be put in when you don't have enough land or acreage to have a regular septic system. And the code does allow that, but the code also states that if you do that, you have a responsibility to make sure that system is maintained. There's a lot more electronics, right? As Kelvin said, and moving parts that could fail. And you would never know it unless a professional was able to inspect it and tell you.
And that's also kind of what we're doing with the use permits as well, is trying to get more documentation and better ways to monitor how our septic systems are looking when they sell. And then also just so, buyers aren't buying, septic systems that are failing. So
What's the difference between a high level system and a regular septic?
it's just able to fit in a smaller area. So, if you have I don't know, less than an acre, and you can't fit in a soil treatment area large enough for a traditional septic system, then a higher level treatment system is usually the way we go about things.
Does it work better, or is it better to just do a traditional septic system?
I think it kind of depends on the situation, honestly. It depends on the soils, it depends on just where you're located. But mainly it's for sizing purposes. So it's covers a smaller area and able to
And they're much more expensive to install.
Yeah.
than a traditional system. They use more mechanical.
And that's the only drawback that I see is you're just, you're using a lot more electronics and
Like who is Hoot one of those higher level? It's a brand name.
the ones that I see here are, so I work with Tim Petz, he's one of the engineers that I work with a lot. So he uses Orenco and Infiltrator. So he uses Infiltrator septic tanks. And those are poly. So the thing is they're easier to transport, they're easier to manufacture. Concrete, you kind of have to have them on big trucks and try to maneuver them around the county and small roads, and it adds up. So in some cases, high level treatment's just a cheaper way to go, and it's just easier. But then in other cases, it is pretty expensive to do. So
Oh, you're saying sometimes higher level is cheaper? It depends on.
it depends on
the
what,
tank?
yeah, it depends on the tank. So just the tank portion, because concrete is just going to involve a lot more resources and maneuvering around.
Do we have more online questions?
Yeah, that's why I came over here. So how would one know if they have a high level treatment system?
Reaching out to our community development office, they should be able to pull those records and provide you with any information that we have on that septic system. Now, I will say that our records some of them are pretty old, so it might take a few days. And there's also the chance that we might not be able to find it. I haven't encountered that yet, but I have heard that that is a possibility, so.
Well, I higher level systems have an electronics panel and a standard one. Right?
Yeah.
So if you've got panel, you do.
Yeah, there was a different way of, I guess, holding on to these records too. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's just, I don't know what the filing system was before, so.
And without digging into the ground, if you look around your house, you should be able to find it.
Yeah, you should. There should be inspection ports that will identify where the soil treatment area is. Septic tank might be a little bit harder, but as long as you contact community development, they should be able to help you out. Yeah.
I want to point out one thing about usually at least a portion of any advanced treatment system is going to have the infusing of oxygen. And so you're going to have a motor and a pump. And it's important that without waiting for somebody to inspect, that you have a way of knowing that air infusion is taking place.
Yeah, as far as the control panels that are on some of these septic systems, I mean, they do alert you when there's high water levels or something's not working right. So that is one way that you'll know if your system is failing or something's going on and that you need to contact a
They have
septic
actual
company.
alarms on them.
Yeah, and they're pretty loud too. Typically, they're installed outside of the house, so you're not hearing it in your bedroom or something like that. So, yeah.
So I have a much simpler question. I heard from someone that seemed like a reliable source, that buying and using single ply rather than 2-ply toilet paper is better for your septic system because it's easier to process.
So what I've always done is just use the septic safe toilet paper. And I haven't heard anything different. I mean, I could definitely look into that, but I usually trust those.
The company that pumps us.
Mhm.
You know their name, remember their name? Anyway, their card that they leave says how often you should have it pumped, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It says single paper only.
Okay.
Single ply.
Well, on the stores, you look on the side of the packages, it will tell you septic safe. So, as long as you're buying septic safe. You can go to the single, but then you're gonna watch the kids and some are gonna say, well, I gotta use twice as much now. Because I'm down to single.
Yeah.
So as long as you're making sure it's septic safe.
Yeah, there should be a little banner on the actual toilet paper packaging.
On the sides.
Yeah.
We have more online questions?
Yeah, we have just got some, we have a couple more minutes here, so we'll see how many we can get through. The flushable bacteria packets for septic systems, do they actually do anything?
That I don't know. I mean, if that person wants, they can send it to me and I can investigate it more, but I don't know too much about those flushable
Okay,
septic packets.
and then you talked about cleaning with bleach. Are you talking about just using bleach in laundry or just in cleaners, or it should just not be used at all?
I wouldn't use it at all. The biggest thing is, you have all this bacteria in your septic system and it's processing all the wastewater. So if you're killing them off, then it's not going to work as efficiently. So you definitely don't want to kill off all the bacteria because then you're not going to be able to process that wastewater correctly.
Approved list of septic engineers or construction companies.
Yeah, so we do have a list of accepted installers in the county. I think we have that on the community development website. And then I think we also have a list of engineers as well, and septic pumpers. If we don't have the list of engineers, I'll definitely get that up there. But I know Tim Petz does work around Gilpin County a lot. I see a lot of his design plans. But there are other engineers that you can look out for as well. But yeah, I'm pretty confident we have the septic pumpers and then also the installers for the county.
Just the Gilpin County website.
Yeah,
Community development.
well, yeah, the main Gilpin County website and then the Community Development Department. We work with them, so they help us with licensing and code enforcement. And then Kelvin's the inspector, so he'll actually go out and make sure that whatever the design that the engineer submitted is what's in the ground. That's a big part of his job. And also looking at, repairs. If it's a major repair, there has to be a plan submitted by a septic engineer.
And as far as like installers in the county, what I'm requiring right now is to have them take the state test, which is part A. We don't have a part B, that would be from Gilpin County. That might be in the works once I get a better understanding of what we should have in Gilpin County regs. But for now, it's just a part A state exam. And then also this NOT certification that is offered by the state. And that's kind of what I'm requiring the installers to have. And I took the NOT course. And it was really helpful. And I think that, all the installers in the county should continue to have that certification as well, just to reinforce, good practices.
Yeah, I think you answered most of these. So the septic inspectors, are you holding them accountable for their services? Like they have to report to the county for what they're doing?
Yeah, so my job is just to make sure that everything's following what the engineer has designed. If it's within regulations, I mean, that's the other thing with engineers. I have to make sure that it is following regulation 43 and also our Gilpin County regulations. There's a lot of back and forth with the engineers that work in this county, but then also the installers that are working in this county. Sometimes there are changes to design plans that I am not aware of until I head out to do an inspection of the open hole for the soil treatment area. So when that happens, I have to reach out to the engineer, get a certified letter letting me know that they're aware of the change, and then we can keep going. Basically what I'm doing is just making sure that, we're not completing a project until it is exactly what the engineer is stating that it should be, and we're not deviating too much from that.
But then what about inspections or just general?
What do you mean that you're talking about like pumping, the pump out? and things
The
like
pump out, that one, not as much. The septic pumpers should have the NOT certification.
But they are required by law that if the system is failing, they do report it to the
Yes, and that is something that's another fail safe too, is, that they have to report that kind of stuff. In the long term, I think maybe exploring more in the septic pumpers and kind of seeing what we're doing there. But my priority so far has been just making sure that any septic systems that are going in now or that are being repaired are done correctly. But I will take a look at that.
Okay, cool. Well, I think the library closes at 8, so we better stop. But thanks everyone. If you have more questions, You can email Lisa, Calvin, or myself, and we'll make sure we get your questions answered. Thanks for your attention tonight and happy spring.
Yeah, spring is here.